I can tell you the two teams that will represent the Big 12 in the conference title game. Stick around. This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making this show your first listen every single day. Today, BYU, Colorado will meet in the Big 12 championship. I think Iowa State is in that third spot. There's also a good chance, in my opinion, the Cyclones are there. Where is Arizona State? I'll give you that. Middle segment, leave Boise State out of this conversation. They are not as good as Arizona State, as Colorado, as BYU, as Iowa State. So why do we have to put them above those teams? And finally, does BYU have the wrong approach to college football? I'm going to talk more in depth this week about the collapse of Colorado and BYU and how we got here when 3 weeks ago it was supposed to be those two teams. If you hit subscribe, I get to keep my job. I think BYU and Colorado are going to meet in the conference championship game. Iowa State is right there as well. By the way, I'll be on hand in Ames, Iowa on Saturday, high of 25, low of 8 for Iowa State and Kansas State, rooting for the Big 12 as a whole. K-State also with a very vested interest as they can make the title game. Colorado has a very good shot because they have the easiest game this week. They're going to beat Oklahoma State in Boulder. I have no questions about that. Well, the Big 12's funky and you never know. I'm the king of saying that. Colorado is going to win this week. BYU is going to beat Houston. Houston's offense has been just punched to submission at this point. They've scored 13 points in the last two games. That slow spark they had, awesome. BYU is going to win 17-6, 20-6. I don't trust the BYU offense, but I do trust that they win against Houston. So then the question mark for me comes from Arizona State to Arizona. And the other big question mark, Iowa State and Kansas State. What happens in those games that gets us to 2? Now that we know Colorado and BYU are going to win, I'll give you the path of how I think this whole thing's going to happen. And it starts with Arizona State losing to Arizona. What? That would never happen. How would you? Welcome to Rivalry Week. This is the unique situation the Big 12 has put itself in. Most teams aren't playing their rival on Saturday or Friday. Instead, they're watching somebody else across the country do it. That is the case for Arizona State. This game at Arizona is the perfect spot for your rival who beat you by 36 points last year to find a way again. The analytics certainly say that Arizona State is going to win this game. I get that. But analytics in the Big 12 at this point, I struggle to even read these to you because none of it has made any sense whatsoever. And it would only make sense that in a rivalry game, that team's a hated foe would push their best to keep the Arizona State Sun Devils out of the title. Arizona State's defense, 100th in the country on third and fourth down success. And if that is the case, the passing game on short downs, on long downs, on late downs, Arizona will still have success based on the lack of consistency from Arizona State defensively on those late downs. And I say lack of consistency. They have been consistently bad. That's not a good thing. They grade well in a lot of areas. But Arizona State's defense is not good on third and fourth down. Neither is Arizona's. This is going to be a game that goes back and forth. Who has the more high-powered offense? You might be able to argue Arizona State. Who has the better quarterback? Certainly Arizona. The better wide receiver, Arizona. That gives the Wildcats a chance. That's domino one that you need if you're Colorado or BYU. So here's the way that I think we're going to get to BYU and Colorado. It starts with that BYU win versus Houston. You're going to have it. Then there's the Kansas State win at Iowa State. This is a revenge game in similar weather to last year where Kansas State just wants to go win a rivalry. This is one of the most hated games in the entire Big 12, and they are not cross-state rivals. Like both of these teams have schools in state they also hate, but this seems to be paramount because it's a conference game, and this week it counts for a conference championship. I'm leaning Kansas State as of today. That benefits BYU. In a world where Texas Tech or West Virginia, either of them win, that's effectively a wash. Baylor and Kansas, either of them win, a wash. But a world where Colorado beats Oklahoma State and where for BYU, for the Cougars, you get a win against Houston, Kansas State beats Iowa State, Arizona State beats Arizona, you're in. That's it. That's BYU's path to a conference championship, one of the many. For Colorado, where I think this starts is that BYU win against Houston, like we just talked about, that Kansas State win against Iowa State, like we just said, the Arizona win over Arizona State, which so many teams in that little pod need to happen. And then for Colorado, another big thing you're kind of counting on here is question Baylor, Kansas, Texas Tech, nothing. Those teams are fairly irrelevant to you because Baylor and Kansas, Texas Tech, West Virginia, they all have 3 or more losses in Big 12 play. Therefore, as long as Colorado wins its game, they can't touch you in a tiebreaker. All of this is based on tiebreakers. So for BYU and Colorado, here's what you're rooting for. That is your conference championship matchup like we were promised. It just feels right to me that we would still get what we were guaranteed 3 weeks ago in BYU and Colorado. And to get there, here's what you're going to need. BYU beats Houston, Colorado beats Oklahoma State. I think those two things are easy. Where it gets funky is then Kansas State beats Iowa State, Arizona beats Arizona State. That leaves us with 2 7-2 teams. This is pretty much, and this is all based on Jordan Smith and the graphic he posted on Twitter, this is pretty much the only way we're going to get BYU and Colorado, and it's the most favorable matchup of the Big 12 championship possibilities because it's what we wanted 3 weeks ago. There are still so many avenues for Baylor to be here. There are avenues for Baylor and Texas Tech to play, which is a lot. There are avenues for BYU and Kansas State to rematch, or Kansas State and Texas Tech. West Virginia and Iowa State could meet in Arlington. But I think the key, that my number one right now, my number one leaning is BYU Colorado. My number 2 leaning is BYU Iowa State. Why? Again, I'm so confident that BYU will win against Houston, and I'm very confident that Arizona is going to find a way to upset Arizona State. I'm putting my chips in that basket early this week. I've got a hunch. In that scenario, even with a Colorado win against Oklahoma State, they're at 7-2. With a BYU win over Houston, they're at 7-2. This is in conference play. Iowa State beats Kansas State, which again, I'll be on hand for. I'm so excited. 7-2. And then Arizona trounces Arizona State. That drops Arizona State to 6-3. Now we're looking at 7-2, 7-2, 7-2 between Colorado, BYU, and Iowa State, I should say. And in that scenario, we're left with BYU, Iowa State, Big 12 championship game. That's it. That's where I lean as of today. I've divvied out all the scenarios. I've looked at the preseason stuff. I've looked at the in-season stuff. I've looked at the analytics, which, what do they tell me in this conference, huh? Oh, you think you're smart, huh, Mr. Big 12 guy? I don't know anymore. None of us know anymore. 9 different teams are still in the running for this thing, which is just really, really absurd. Which, by the way, 9 would mean TCU somewhere in there, I believe. And I think it's 8. I keep hearing 9. Texas Tech's there. 9 is just, that's over half the conference is alive with a week to go. Can I give you this really quick? Texas Tech goes to the Big 12 championship if this happens. Houston beats BYU. Kansas State beats Iowa State. Arizona beats Arizona State. Texas Tech beats West Virginia. Kansas beats Baylor. And Oklahoma State beats Colorado. A lot has to happen. But Texas Tech is there. Coming up, stop talking about Boise State on Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. I said Game Time. I want to go watch Kansas State, Iowa State play this weekend in Ames, Iowa. Can you help me out? They said, joke is on you if you think we can't. We have the lowest price guaranteed, or 110% of the difference is credited to you. Drive on up on Saturday. Drive back on Sunday. Come see some football in very much sub-freezing weather. I said yes. Game Time has all-in pricing. Toggle that feature to show your total upfront, no surprise fees at checkout. Your purchase is covered by the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app. Create an account. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account. Redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. Utilize Game Time to join me watching Kansas State and Iowa State this weekend. Farmageddon, baby, with Game Time. Stop talking about Boise State. Has Boise State won every game ahead of itself? Yes. Is that good? Yes. Would they lose to BYU? Yes. Colorado? Uh-huh. How about Iowa State? For sure. What about Arizona State, the best team in the Big 12 right now? Yeah, but definitely. Kansas is playing better. Would Boise State lose to Kansas? For sure. Like example number one, I look up the analytics. I look up the efficiencies, which takes less into account your opponent and the strength of your opponent and more into account how you would fare, how a Boise State would fare this season in general from an efficiency standpoint. I don't care if you're playing Abilene Christian or Alabama. And you know what the efficiencies say? That BYU would have a billion% chance to win that game. 73% to be exact. That Kansas would have a 60%, 5-6 Kansas would have a 60% chance to beat Boise State at a neutral site. Oh, well, wait a second. This is what you're saying right now. This is what a Boise State fan would say. Wait. Kansas lost to UNLV and we beat UNLV. So transitive property, we would beat Kansas. Kansas is terrible. They lost to UNLV and we didn't. Okay. Well, that was Kansas's loss to UNLV in like game 2. All right. Game 3. Yeah, but it still matters. Okay, sure. So the one thing that Boise State hangs its hat on is that 3-point loss, to Oregon that happened in game 2. But I thought, well, you just told me about, Kansas lost to UNLV and you beat UNLV, so obviously you're better than Kansas. But also the one thing that Boise State has going for it happened on September 7th. I've slept since then. It is November 26th. Let me read you this schedule. Yes, did Boise State beat all the teams ahead of it? For sure. Do they deserve a spot in the college football playoff above BYU, above Kansas State even, above Iowa State, above Arizona State, above Colorado? No. Let me read you this schedule. There's a reason. Like we put the clause in there that the top 5 conference champions get to go so that 5th team could limp in. We have given BYU and Arizona State and Colorado the shaft for a Boise State team that was just going to make it here on a technicality. Yeah, we won every game ahead of us. Well, here are those games. I want you to picture Kansas the way they're playing right now. I want you to picture BYU. I want you to picture Colorado, Travis Hunter, and Shadur Sanders and Jimmy Horn Jr. lining up against these teams. That's what I want you to picture. Georgia Southern. I can guarantee you we wouldn't allow 45 points to Georgia Southern. How about Oregon? Man, you really gave them a run for the money, didn't you? In a loss on September 7th. How about Portland State? Ooh, I don't know, man. Travis Hunter might be banged up that week. By week 3, Portland State could give us some issues. Washington State. Beat the brakes off Texas Tech. I'll give you that for sure. I don't have Tech in this conversation. We're talking about BYU or Colorado or Arizona State. I've got 5 teams in the Big 12 that I know are better than Boise State, and would have a better shot in the college football playoff. How about Utah State, huh? 62-30. Boise State killed them. Allowed 30 points, but killed them. Hawaii, maybe. Would Hawaii give you a run for your money? UNLV, by chance. 29-24 final. Got them by 5. Ooh, that sneaky running Rebels team. San Diego State, Nevada, who you beat by 7, San Jose State, or Wyoming, who you beat by 4. It would be a different story, maybe, if Boise State was blowing teams out, if Boise State was playing its best football. But that's not the case right now. And we all have to sit here and watch it. I'm usually the proponent for the little man. Dude, I love Washington State. I love Oregon State. I think both of those teams could add some serious value to a Power 4 league. And I also believe that about Boise State. But the second it starts going weird is like, we're giving this team that much power? When I just told you 5-6 Kansas has a 60% chance to win against Boise State. Let me do this. I'm going to go to my little matchup predictor. CollegeFootballInsiders.com takes all your efficiencies. 70% chance for Colorado to beat Boise State. Let me ask it about this. Let me ask Boise State to this matchup predictor. And no, even better. Colorado, okay. And Alabama, who everybody believes is going to go to the college football playoff national championship. All right. Bama has a 65% chance to win that game. So Bama is to Colorado as Colorado is to Boise State. You know? Like that is I just don't think Boise State's in the same league. They couldn't compete with the same schedule. We're not playing Nevada in a conference game. We have a Texas Tech who's sneaky and scrappy. We have a Baylor who's scrappy. We have an Arizona State at the top of the conference right now. That, to me, is so much more meaningful. And it has to be. But nope, we're going to give these guys a chance because they keep winning these games. Like, I just need you to understand, I get Georgia's probably would run the table quite possibly in the Big 12. That Alabama could win a whole lot of games in the Big 12, probably. But now, conversely, let's put a Big 12 team. I mean, that's the argument we make for the SEC over the Big 12, isn't it? Do you see where I'm going with this? We make the argument that, oh, well, in the Big 12, Georgia would be 12-0. Why can't we make that argument about a Big 12 team in the Mountain West? You know? Why then it's, oh, but Boise State's so cute. And they have that running back that everybody was talking about at the beginning of the season. And I don't hate Boise State. But now that they're pulling people away, our teams away from deserved spots in the college football playoff, and now that Boise State could lose the Mountain West Conference Championship and all of a sudden still be an at-large bid in the college football playoff, now that that's the rhetoric, it just doesn't work. It's not going to put, we talked about 12 is so we can have the best 12, the right 12, a right mix of teams in the college football playoff that are most representative of what football is right now. And we're not getting that. We don't have that. Boise State, with a loss in the Mountain West Conference Championship, certainly shouldn't go. Then do you put Tulane in there? Is that where we go from here? Do we give them the 12 spot and Boise State the 8 spot and just kick out the Big 12 altogether? Are those your top 5 conference champions? Or then is the Big 12 going to get the 12 spot? It is just mind-numbing that these 3-loss SEC teams, that these Boise States of the world are going to take such precedent over a Big 12 that deserves to be there. Sagarin rating number 2 conference in all of college football. Better than the Big 10. You have 3 teams. Congrats. 4 on a good day. Coming up, does BYU have an off approach to college football? This is Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is the spot to go this weekend. That's right. We're here, baby. We've reached it. Rivalry weekend in college football, and there are a whole lot of games from Thursday through Saturday, and I love Utah. +10 against UCF. I do. I've never thought I would say it toward the back half of this season, but I think that Utah covers and possibly wins that football game because of its defensive prowess. So, Italian Stallion and all, FanDuel is your place to bet on the Utes. And if you do it right now, $5. Any $5 and a $5 win will get you $150 in bonus bets. That's right. Tackle the NFL, tackle college football, $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more. Do it with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Does BYU have the wrong approach to football? From the reaction to Arizona State students to the reaction to a recording of a captain. I'm not going to say who. I'm not going to speculate who it was, though many think they know who it was, saying swear words at halftime and drumming up his team, to Kalani Sitake's rhetoric this season and in seasons prior. Is BYU shooting itself in the foot with an incorrect approach to football because of how they handle situations like this? From rowdy fans to a locker room spiel to the head coach and the way he talks. I want to address that. Here's where I will start. This is a very good, long thread that I'm going to read word for word and see if you, a BYU fan or you, a Big 12 fan, sees this out of the Cougars. From Terrell Williams. He says, Inferno hot take incoming. I've been and remain a huge Kalani proponent. What he and this team have accomplished this season has been remarkable and probable, and they deserve major kudos. However, one consistent concern, is this the issue with BYU? One consistent concern I've had with Kalani's teams and it showed again, is a lack of killer instinct and aggressor mentality when it matters most. So many people have talked about, this is me talking now, so many have talked about coming out flat, not playing with passion, not seeing that fervor that we're used to from most of these rabid college football teams from BYU. Carroll continues. 2 weeks in a row, with everything on the line, this team has come out flat and lifeless in the first half. Why? Because they've lacked a killer mentality. After the Utah game, Kalani gave a locker room speech about loving Utah, its coaches and players, saying they are ours. Meanwhile, Whittingham was out here throwing subtle shade at BYU every chance he gets, refusing to even say the name BYU, a tactic he learned from Urban Meyer, because deep down he wants his team to destroy BYU, and every Utah player feels the same way. It's football and we're rivals. There's no love lost there, and honestly, that's great. That's a true rivalry. We need to embrace it. Kalani's current hold hands and sing kumbaya approach feels like it's dulling our edge and isn't lighting this team's fire. After a win against a hated rival where the boys went to war, they want to relish in the fact they punched their opponents in the mouth and they stomped on their grave. So let's keep football, and keep the love everyone speeches for firesides. Thanks for attending my TED Talk. That tweet, me again, that message is something I think you got out of the verbiage, out of the passion, out of the heat and fire of the BYU player who was inappropriately recorded while giving a very passionate halftime speech this week while down 21-3. My thoughts immediately after hearing that were, 1, insane anyone would have the disrespect to record that. 2, and I might be in the minority, BYU fans could disagree, there were swear words riddled through this halftime speech. But to me, an emotional message like that from a leader while down 21-3, I played junior high football and heard those. That part of college football rocks. You can't kill that part of what these guys take so seriously as possibly, and currently in college football, their livelihoods. I don't think we can be mad with passion that encompasses what a rivalry is, what college football is, what the intensity is like. I love when a coach, and to give you some perspective here, I'm not a wise sage. I haven't seen 50 years of college football. I'm 23 years old. I'm the age of those players in the locker room. I can tell you what I want. When I'm in the heat of battle, I don't want a Dave Aranda, sorry, Dave, to come in and say, guys, we're going to love our opponent. We're going to love them. We're going to love. Yes, I think there's some respectability to that. But you're in a university where the LDS faith, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, that faith has already built this aura of love. Okay, how do we merge? How do we mix the killer mentality? This was an issue at Baylor for a long time. Was person over players the mantra, but also at some point we do have to also have the players. We've got the love for sure. But for BYU, you have to have the fight. You have to have the fire. I've seen it before, but it seems so odd to me that a lot of times, and I don't want to knock somebody being a loving human being. I don't want to knock somebody being kind, someone being nice, being called to something bigger than sports. Get it. 100%. But I do want to question, and again, I use Baylor person over player. Where does the player part come in? Where does the fire come in? Where does we just beat our rival? Let's take a second. And I think that the words that were used there were like dance on their grave. Maybe you don't even have to go that far. But give me a little oomph. Instill in me that we have to beat that team across the way into submission. I want that. As a guy in that locker room, I don't want, hey, let's hold their hands. Let's beat them with kindness and respect. Let's go win, boys. Sure, kindness and respect. Yes, lack of penalties, fundamentals, be a complete football team, well put together, a group of young men. We're growing human beings. Yes, but I want to cross out the M's. I want to walk on a mat that says 5 and 7. I want to have a banner that hangs up in the locker room every day of the offseason that has the score on it from that Arizona State game. I want to be reminded of those kids on the field. I want to be reminded of Kenny Dillingham and his post-game tirade. I don't want to, I don't want to just hold their hands and love on them. That's something outside of the game for sure, and keep respect within the game, no doubt, but have the killer mentality. Kill them with respect. I think that halftime speech was warranted. I have been in those locker rooms, like I said, in junior high. So the BYU fans that were, and I don't even know if it's many BYU fans that were disgusted by it. I saw a lot of Utah fans like, oh, he swore. All right. I also, this is in the category of soft. I feel like the halftime speech was not soft. Kalani Sitake's post-game speech after Utah, now looking back, it's like I didn't think it was an issue then, but now you're like, oh, shoot, you're right. They don't really have that killer mentality, do they? Say, the fact that a player's got to stand up at halftime and say, hey, guys, bring the killer mentality. I want the head coach to give me that pregame. Where were they in the first half? With the Arizona State deal, Kenny Dillingham way out of line. Like your wife standing next to you. What a weird, enraged thing where he just goes after the officials. And he was weird. He came back to say yesterday, I guess it was in a press conference, that he was in the wrong for how he handled late game adjustments and late game calls as a coach. So why, if you were in the wrong, would you be so ticked off with the officiating crew at that level? And they got it right, by the way. You should never be looking over their shoulder. Just have some respect, have some restraint. I don't think he's a bad coach. I understand his fire, his passion, but again, you have to have the certain amount of withdrawal here. Him being over their shoulder with his wife right there, with the ESPN reporter right there. He's setting an example, too, for 19-year-olds. And when he's in a referee's face saying that's effing BS and just completely going up. I mean, I put myself in the situation of that referee. I want to punch the guy in the face. Like, you cannot talk to me as a fellow human being like that. That deserved a flag. Just stop. Be normal for a second. That was completely unwarranted. And anybody who's like, yeah, well, he was right. No. Just be a human being, dude. That's easy. But as far as the fans being on the field and they're saying bad words and they're on the dude, I've seen so many field rushes. I've heard so many heinous things from 19-year-olds. Does that justify it? Does it make it okay? No. But we have to understand those are 19-year-olds at Arizona State, one of the top party schools in America. They're not at the football game to learn. They don't go to a lot of football games in general. Sorry. But they were passionate. Cross the line? Yeah. What do you expect a 19-year-old who's standing on a football field to do? I mean, the coach, even Kalani, said in his play, like, I get it, man. That's just a passionate fan base. We got to beat them. If we don't want them to do that, we got to beat them. Yeah, that's a great perspective, Kalani. Thank you. Yeah, it sucked. Oh, we don't want to go back there. Okay, I get it. That don't bring your kids to that environment, but it's kind of what you're going to get from 19-year-olds. I'm not going to parent them. And your Facebook post or your Twitter post is not going to fix a dang thing. Though I think it did for Utah. It's like a lot of Utah fans are like, yeah, sorry for throwing trash on the field. But those were like adults. The 19-year-olds for Arizona State are not going to have the same wherewithal and apologetic attitude that Utah fans did. Thank you, Utah fans, for being normal. This has been It Always Will Be. Come back tomorrow for squad shows tomorrow, by the way, on Wednesday this week. Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Dose Grande.